If you've been following the news lately, I know there is a bunch of crazy stuff in the headlines these days. And one of the things that just happened is St. Louis was ranked the #1 most dangerous city in the US by Forbes. Yeah, I kid you not. So in this video, we're talking about what that means, what that looks like for St. Louis, if you're someone who is moving to the area wondering more about that, or if you live in St. Louis and you want to know what this looks like for the city of St. Louis. We're talking about that in this video today. Hey there, welcome to the channel or welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Peistrup, and real quick, if you're someone moving to St. Louis or you live here already, my team and I love the reach outs we get through the YouTube channel from clients who reach out looking to move here, looking to buy or sell in St. Louis. That is my favorite part of my job. Sharing everything about St. Louis, both the good and the not so good, is what I do here on this channel. So if I can do anything to help you with that move to or from St. Louis, let's get in touch. Now, is St. Louis really the most dangerous city in the US? I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, controversial, and could be tough to answer. But, a lot of these sites and sources that rank different cities, and there's some that make that top of the list more often than others. St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, Memphis, those are some of the ones you will see at the top of these lists more often than others. But the way they really look at this kind of stuff is they try to measure it in terms of stuff like, homicides per capita, vandalism, assault, property destruction, arson. There's a lot of different ways of looking at crime. But it's also breaking down, you gotta understand how they look at this stuff and how a lot of this applies to the city of St. Louis. So when you see St. Louis in these headlines, they're talking about the city of St. Louis, which has around 300,000 people who live there. But there is a whole place to live outside of the city, and there's around 3 million people who live in the surrounding counties. And unfortunately, if you read that article, you'll see it says that crime's been going up everywhere. It's not just St. Louis. They've been seeing more homicides, more assault, more vandalism in a lot of places that's been on the rise. So it's not just St. Louis. And unfortunately, it's a nationwide thing. This article says that homicides rose 7% last year. And that's not just St. Louis. That is everywhere, unfortunately. One reason the article mentions as why St. Louis might not be the safest is that we're not exactly economically thriving in St. Louis. The city has been declining in population and GDP has been growing, but slower than the rest of the country. And if crime is going up across the country and the St. Louis population is going down, yeah, that's going to increase the crime per capita we see here in St. Louis. And then unfortunately, when St. Louis ranks at the top of that list, it makes people want to not travel here, not want to move here, not want to work here. So it kind of, continues that negative cycle for St. Louis. And I mean, you can look at this map right here. This is straight from the St. Louis Police Department. Just focusing on the city, I'm not sure why there's some chunks of Webster Groves and stuff that shows up there. Just focusing on the city, you can clearly see there are some, clusters where crime and, events happen more often than others. I mean, you'll see a cluster around downtown. There's another one around, Carondelet, Dutchtown, and there's another, chunk up there in North City. So you see that, some neighborhoods might have more crime than others. Overall, a lot of these statistics being reported are for the city of St. Louis. And the reason that's always significant here with St. Louis and the way they measure these kinds of things is that you're looking at an area with a population of 300,000 people, and people think you're talking about the 11 other counties that have 3 million people between Missouri and Illinois. So it's like these articles are talking about St. Louis, the city, and people think they're suddenly referencing, the entire St. Louis metro area, which really isn't the case. The issue with this is that people take the data from the city of St. Louis and extrapolate it to all the suburbs around it when those suburbs were never part of the data in the first place. They manipulate it and start talking about all the surrounding counties, and it's like, wait a minute, none of these sources even mention the suburbs. They only address the city of St. Louis as being the most dangerous. If these rankings took into account any of the suburbs, St. Louis would not be at the top of the crime lists. So that is unfortunate for the city of St. Louis, and that's not a surprise. We've known that for a while. The population's going down, GDP has kind of been stagnant. But again, that is just the city. If you look at St. Charles County, that is one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Missouri. Economically, population-wise, development, like there is a ton of stuff going on in St. Charles County. But you're never going to hear about that with the rest of St. Louis because people write about the city, not the suburbs. I mean, for starters, like I said, St. Louis was ranked number 1 by Forbes, most dangerous in the US. We ranked number 5, most dangerous by World Population Review, number 5 again by Neighborhood Scout, and number 99 out of 125 places as the best place to live by US News. So we're at the bottom of that list. But again, these places again and again are looking at the city of St. Louis. The reason that's important is if you're moving to St. Louis and you're gonna be 45 minutes outside the city, do you think it's really relevant to you if these articles are talking about downtown St. Louis? I mean, unless you plan on living in the middle of the city, it doesn't apply to the suburbs. Like, these statistics are suddenly no longer accurate because these are looking at the city of St. Louis and they are neglecting the 11 other counties that are in the area that people choose from when they come to live in St. Louis. So you gotta think, if you're moving to St. Louis and your focus is strictly in the suburbs and you're gonna be half an hour outside the city, but you're basing your whole view of the St. Louis area on a little sliver, which is the city, and the only place a lot of these articles talk about, you got to see how these articles can be misleading and how those numbers can kind of be harmful for the St. Louis area because it's simply not true if you're looking at statistics that are just the city, when in reality, I mean, you got like 2.5 million people that live outside the city here in St. Louis. Now, I'm not gonna try to sit here and convince you St. Louis is full of rainbows and sunshine and you should absolutely live here. But I'm just saying, if you're gonna do your research and look at stuff like this and you're moving to St. Louis, make sure you're reading stuff that applies to where you're actually gonna be living, because a lot of people these days that I work with, if they can work remotely or they don't work in the city of St. Louis and they're looking, in the west of St. Louis County or St. Charles County, that's not really close to St. Louis City. If you're a 30-minute drive to get into the city, how affected do you think you're going to be by whatever the articles say about crime rates and statistics if you don't plan on actually going to the city? Now, if you plan on living in the city of St. Louis, then yeah, you might want to do your research more carefully about which neighborhood you pick and which side of the street you live on in some cases. Talk to the police department, ask them, where they see a lot of incidents and where they see as, the safer areas to be. Walk the streets during night, drive around, when it gets dark outside to see, is it well lit? Do you see people gathering, in a weird way on the street corners? Or do you feel like you could walk your dog home at night or just go for a walk by yourself and feel pretty okay? It's stuff like that where I recommend, try to get a feel for the area. Yes, read the articles, read, what the news says if you want about some of these places, but ask the neighbors if you're looking at houses in these areas, or ask the police department, what their thoughts are on, the right area you might want to pick if crime and safety is your main concern living in St. Louis. But again, that is the city of St. Louis, and they separate the city from the entire St. Louis metro area. So you got to get the full picture if you're moving to St. Louis or you're doing your research on crime and safety in St. Louis. Now, trust me, there are places that I would not touch, and there are places that, I would feel fine if I accidentally left my car unlocked for a whole day. But any city is like that. There's the good, there's the bad, and there's the ugly as far as different neighborhoods and different parts of town where you see different, levels of crime and safety and that kind of stuff. So I hope this video was at least helpful for breaking down that article and why St. Louis doesn't always rank so highly with these sources. Again, the biggest takeaway here is pay attention to what area they're talking about, because they're not talking about the St. Louis metro area. They're talking about the city. So unless you plan on living in the city of St. Louis, which is a fraction of the population here, then the articles aren't as relevant to you if you're going to be living, way out in the suburbs of St. Louis. Again, not trying to say St. Louis is perfect in every way. It definitely is not. All I'm saying is there are a lot of different places to choose from when living in St. Louis The city is just one of many. So again, like I said, if you're moving to St. Louis, if you're moving from, somewhere in the area and you want help with that process of navigating this real estate market right now, buying a house, buying a condo, send over an email or send a text message. Let's get in touch and let's get that conversation started to help you out here with that process of moving to St. Louis. Like I said, the YouTube community is by far my favorite clients to work with who reach out with questions and want to help with that process of moving to St. Louis. So if that sounds like you, let's get that conversation started. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you take care. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one right here on the Living St. Louis channel.